Have you ever read an autobiography before? An autobiography is a book that a person writes about themselves. It's a book that tells of their life story, of the places they've lived, the things they've done, the achievements they've made. If you head into your local library, chances are you can find autobiography on sports people, artists, politicians, and more. An autobiography is one way that you can share your life story with others, but it's not the only way. Sometimes the best way is by telling people face to face when you're talking to them. And in Acts 22 and 23, we see that Paul shared his story with others. Except that it wasn't a story about where he'd lived or what he'd done, it was his faith story. Paul, now in Jerusalem, stood in front of a group of Jews and wanted them to know how Jesus had changed his life. But this group was already angry with Paul before he'd arrived in town. They thought he was now an enemy, someone who was against the Jews, breaking the laws and disrespecting the temple. And so they made a huge scene and had him arrested. But Paul asked for permission to talk to this crowd, and he told them how God had changed his life and his heart. He told them that he was still very much Jewish. He explained how Christ is the Messiah who fulfills all the law in the temples. And he explained how God had sent him to the Gentiles. But these people hated that Paul had not only been spending time with the Gentiles, but had been turning the whole Jewish culture upside down with ideas that Jesus was the Messiah and that Gentiles could be saved without following the Jewish laws. The crowd was so full of rage that Paul had to end up being put under protective custody because they wanted to have him killed. But this didn't stop Paul from sharing the good news. He wanted everyone to know how God had changed his heart and that he could do the same for them as well. Like Paul, we are called to share the good news with others, and one way we can do that is by sharing our own faith story. Have you ever thought about what your faith story is? Do you have anyone that you could tell your faith story to this week? Let's encourage each other this week to not only share, but to listen to each other's faith stories. Let's be bold and confident like Paul.